So the first panel, we're going to start out by talking about the pesticide legislation. That was something that was triggered in several states, and this year it got a lot of people interested, thinking, I've never thought about this topic before, or maybe I did, but I didn't know the depths of it. We were up against Monsanto during this legislation, and we still are. This was a state issue that is now in the federal arena being talked about right now, this month, and voted on. And what happened during that time? I was on the ground fighting in Tennessee as well. Bernadette absolutely was. We had a problem because what was being said about the bill by Monsanto did not match what the language of the bill actually said. And that was manipulation for voting purposes, for not really talking about what the harms it actually did. So I wanted to get a panel of people up here that would discuss, and our title is Evading Accountability When Pesticides Harm. So we have Senator Bowling here, and she has served as state senator and for several years. She is known as the fierce senator who stands very firm and does not waver. But she also had constituents talking to her during this time. And when the legislation was presented to you, when you actually read the bill, that's how I would like to approach this for the two elected officials. When you first heard of this bill, you had voted for the bill in the committees, and you changed your vote. Can you walk us through that process?
I will do my best. I'm Senator Janice Bowling, and I was in a committee, and we had a lot of constituents, and there's a national insurance company, should we call them by name?
Yes.
Farm Bureau, and they were lobbying heavily for this bill. And I listened to them and trusted them, and I still had my reservations, but when it came to committee, I voted for it, and I regret that vote. However, then as I began to look more and more when it got on the floor, the thing that they were saying was that this would just be something to help Pajer not be sued, that they were being sued over and over and over, and this was just to help keep people who used a product, if they were injured by that product, they couldn't just create this lawsuit and try to get a lot of money for it. Well, the fact of the matter is, a lot of people do get cancer. A lot of people do have, we don't even know the extent of all the injuries because it could become genetic. It can then go to the next generation. It is a dangerous substance. And so Pajer, which is an international company now, there they were controlling Farm Bureau, who were really, really, really upset with me when I changed my vote. But unfortunately, a lot of the people that we used to be able to rely on, and when you're a state senator, when you're a state rep, you like to know organizations that are what I call truth brokers. And they are supposed to be experts in a thing, and you can call on them for an opinion or some facts. Those days seem to be over as far as I'm concerned. And Monty, I think that's why he's running for governor. It's very frustrating when there are no truth sayers. And as a matter of fact, some of the organizations that you have trusted and been affiliated with are no longer brokering truth at all. And it's big pharma, big agriculture, it's big insurance, and they seem to want to control everything. And unfortunately, it does seem like, as a state senator, it is not my job to give you rights. God gave you rights. God gave you liberty, and he gave you life. And he gave you the right to pursue happiness. Like a little fifth grader said, now God ain't giving you happiness, you gotta go out there and get it yourself. And I said, yes, sir, that's exactly what that means. So when we look at life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, what my job is to protect those things that are already yours. I'm not giving you squat. I'm trying to keep government out of your business and to do those things that promote life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So when you get to this, the same deal. We were being told by the people we used to be able to trust. And once I was able to be beat on the head by Amy and Bernadette, after my vote in the committee, they just about wrote me off. But when they were patient and kind, we had already built up a good relationship. They're outstanding. They're tremendous helpers. And so when it came to the floor vote, I think I spoke against it and voted against it. Yep. And of course, leadership was most unhappy.
So it passed in the Senate, but it was stopped in the House of Representatives in Tennessee. And it's going to come back next year, but we did get it stopped this year. Now, right here we have Representative Monty Fritts. He is known also for being bold and standing firm and knowing the Constitution like the back of his hand. He also had our geoengineering bill passed. A lot of you guys recognize that, Tennessee being the first, yeah. Congratulations on that. But you were on the committee.
I carried it in the Senate.
And so what happened in your committees? Let's take it back to what happened when you first heard about the bill. And I remember talking to him, and he was firm. He's going to vote for that bill. And I'm like, there's something that he's not quite understanding. So it's stopped now, but it'll be revisited in 2026. You are a representative who has now announced you're running for governor of Tennessee.
First, the geoengineering thing. I think there's a synergistic impact to this stuff. And Janice did carry the bill this year to try to up the consequences and develop a more clear pathway to prosecution on the weather modification geoengineering. Right now, the state of Tennessee is not enforcing Title 58-2-116A. We've talked to them in committee about it. The governor's office doesn't want to enforce it. And so we're pushing back on that pretty hard. And hopefully we're going to be able to get some of those folks to reconsider their vote and come to Miss Janice. But I do think there's a synergy with that. I did in the committee, to your original question, Amy. So I carried I carried a bill last year that had similar outcomes. So I'm a gun rights person. I think that wherever you stand on the Second Amendment as a politician, public servant, whichever one you happen to be, that is the great litmus test on where you stand on rights. And as Janice said, as to whether you think you have been endowed by your Creator with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And it gets to that next part where government comes in. Because those 56 men that signed that Declaration of Independence, they said, and to secure these rights, or that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, which says that me and Janice and probably the smartest person in the House of Representatives, Michelle Renault, our first responsibility is to secure your rights. And so anyways, I carried this piece of legislation because firearms industry is under attack from the leftist. And we now, I think, according to gun owners, have the best legislation in the nation to protect firearms manufacturers. So that may have tainted my decision process some. I did vote for the bill. I spoke for the bill. Amy knows that. And in looking at the first set of language, I didn't find it greatly concerning, to be honest with you. And all my farmers, not all, most of my farmers were like, Fritts, we got to have this. You got to support that. Now, Farm Bureau, I think Farm Bureau, the basis of Farm Bureau, it's a great organization, probably one of the best in the country. And if you talk to my local Farm Bureau folks, I think you're going to convince. I see y'all shaking your head, but you got to keep listening for just a minute. I don't mind arguing, I promise. I think the local Farm Bureaus are often what they think they have sent up, the lobbyists don't really carry the way they expect it to. Because my Roane County Farm Bureau folks, my Loudoun County Farm Bureau folks, probably think much more like we do in this room than what the lobbyists do. One of the great things I have learned in being in politics for 3 years is those lobbyists that are high paid are mostly liars. Not all, but mostly liars. And that sounds like a condemning statement, but it's reached the point where I just don't allow most of them in my office anymore because I don't have anything to talk to them about. And And I do that because they are deceptive. We saw that on veterans bills this year. We saw that, I think, on this bill this year.
Yeah.
And so that deceptiveness has kind of pushed them away. Final part of this answer, I promise it won't take too long. The great thing about having people who press for or lobby that are doing it for the good, and we have that in many cases. Bernadette's one of those people, and I'm not blowing smoke just because she's here, but we sat in my office this last week and we talked about constitutionality, and she paints a very compelling case, and we talked about some of the things I think we need to add to that argument, like how the MSDS describe these chemicals and how we start to paint that rather than just some of the arguments we've made.
Fear-based.
I think that becomes...
It was fear-based.
It is. The argument from the lobbyists, from Farm Bureau, was fear-based. That's right. And they have scared the farmers.
Yes.
They have scared the farmers. So I think, and I'll stop with this, Amy, I promise. I think one of our biggest challenges is to help educate those people who have learned over the history of what has been a good organization to just take what they say, and they haven't awakened yet that there might be a group in Columbia that's not necessarily living up to the front part of the little folder of the Farm Bureau, just be honest.
So what are you going to do? You're thinking right now. You're discovering, you're thinking, you're looking into it.
I am, yes,
Okay.
I am. I won't lie to you. Because the thing I hate worse than like drug dealers are politicians that pander to people for their votes. I think most of y'all do too. I will tell you now, I heard Rusty Crowe say this in committee, and I'm gonna have a little fun with it. Somebody asked him up in Washington County, we were up there doing a God, Guns, and Guts tour, and they asked him why he voted against this bill, and he said, because my wife told me to, I was afraid to go home. Yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to cut you off there.
Well, no, I felt a little bit of that heat too. Mrs. Fritts is not at all in favor of this, so I'm getting it from all directions. But I am, Bernadette and I had a good conversation, and I want to make sure first that we're constitutional. And she paints a compelling argument about that. If it is proven that I've went the wrong way constitutionally, I'll apologize to y'all and we'll recant the vote.
Yeah. That's what we're asking. We're asking for truth there. Okay, now I would like to go to the attorney. Actually, let's go to Bernadette. I'm gonna change this up a little. So when you and I were dissecting language, like heavily, on this bill, there was a lot that was going on with what was being said, as we talked about, what was being marketed. Yes, you want to give the history? Go ahead, please.
Hi, my name is Meryl Nass. I'm a doctor, and I work with MAHA Institute, Children's Health Defense, and I've started an organization called Door to Freedom, and our current project is to turn around the attack on farmers and food, and we are putting out a website, so it's called Save Our Food and Farms, SOFAF.org, and we have a list of 50 different ways farmers are being attacked, but we're working on getting the eaters to understand that and see how it affects them, because that's 99% of the population. Okay, what they're talking about here is a bill in Tennessee that was introduced, similar bills, in about 20 states by Bayer Monsanto. So Bayer wanted an in to GMO seeds as well as pesticides and the other things it made, and it decided to buy Monsanto, and it spent 2 years looking at that, and it finally bought Monsanto in 2018, and Monsanto was in control already of over 50 different seed companies. 2 months after it bought Monsanto, Bobby Kennedy and a team of lawyers in California won their first case against Monsanto for glyphosate having caused non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And that case, where the guy got initially over $200 million as an award, which has been whittled down to $21 million, that case started a waterfall of cases, so that now there's about 200,000 cases that have been filed against Bayer now for glyphosate injuries. And so Bayer has been desperate. They've settled 67,000 cases. They've fought some of them. They've won some, lost some. They've already spent $11 billion on the 67,000 settlements, but they've got over 100,000 more coming. And they've set aside $17 billion to either fight them, settle them, or use them for lobbying and bribing politicians and whatever else they can do, because $17 billion is a lot of money. Like more, you know, you could buy everybody in Congress with 17. I'm not saying that's what happens, but it's a lot of money. So Bayer developed, and their CEO has been very open about this. They have a new CEO, and he said, our biggest problem is this liability, and we're going to do everything we can to fight it. So they've asked the Supreme Court to weigh in. They've gone to the EPA, tried to get them to change things. They've gone to 21 states, and they've gone to the federal government. So they had added a rider to the appropriations bill in the House 2 months ago anyway, all of it is about getting rid of liability. Now, to contextualize that, there is only one product in the United States that Congress saw fit to take away liability from the manufacturer, and that is vaccines for children and pregnant women. And that was the 1986 Act, and a lot of us have problems with that because once you take away liability, it's an invitation to make products that are not as safe as they might have been otherwise. And the way people have a mechanism for going after benefits if they feel they've been injured. There's special courts, special masters, and we pay an excise tax on every one of those vaccines, which goes into a fund to help pay people off. This attempt by Bayer is only the second time that I'm aware of in history where a consumer product is seeking to get rid of all liability for injuries. And it's not just Bayer products, it's every pesticide that is labeled in the United States, which is over 50,000 different formulations and brands.
And anything in the future that we don't even know about.
And so so they've used different methods in different places to get this liability shield. In the federal effort, they're trying to prevent the EPA from changing the labels and adding warnings unless it goes through a multi-year, very difficult process. And because they probably own the EPA anyway, they can probably make sure that that process is held up. In the state, so the case that Bobby Kennedy was involved with was a state action, not a federal action, where people could go to state court and say, I was injured. And so they're trying to go state by state and saying the states can't have those bills anymore. And in Tennessee, that's what the bill is about. It would not allow Tennessee citizens to sue Bayer within state court for any perceived injuries.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, that's excellent. So let's go to the argument. Now that she said that, I'm going to flip-flop again. Bernadette, I love the natural conversation, though, to feed off of. Can you talk to that, what she just went on with this is what it is, but we were told from the opposition, this is what it is. And what this is higher groceries, no tools for the farmers, and expand on that.
Okay, excellent. So I want to start off by quoting the bill. I don't have it right in front of me. I thought I had it printed. But in essence, it says, a pesticide manufacturer or seller is not liable in a civil action as long as they have an EPA-approved label on their product. Okay? So not liable in a civil action, and they say related to the labeling, which is everything. That's your warnings, how to use the product, effectiveness, everything. So everything is related to the label. It just takes away the ability to sue them if the EPA if it doesn't yet bear that warning on the label. So what I have right here actually is a printout. I stumbled across online the Tennessee Farm Bureau lobbyist one-pager. the messaging, and this is what we heard, and this is what the farmers, this is the biggest part, is this is what the farmers were being told. A couple of the points I highlighted, they're being told manufacturers are required by federal law to use the label provided by the EPA. Okay? This is very deceptive. They've been saying that we're getting sued, we're getting just sued, these massive lawsuits, and it's not our fault, we can't change the label. EPA won't let us, the federal law won't let us. We have to use the label the EPA gave us. Well, the problem with that is to register a pesticide, you do your own studies as the manufacturer, you draft your own label, and of course you draft it to fit the federal law, right? Manufacturers know how to do this. Yeah, and they submit it for approval.
I have slides of two posters that Pajer is using to confuse farmers as to what's going on. So one says, stand with Missouri farmers, not trial lawyers. The other one says, help stand up for American farmers. That all sounds great. You know, trial lawyers are going after farmers, but trial lawyers are going after Pajer, not farmers. And farmers use the most glyphosate of it, or other products of anybody, and they're most susceptible to the side effects. The other thing that Bayer's lobbyists are saying is that these bills are about taking away glyphosate, that they're about banning pesticides. There is nothing in the state or federal bills about banning pesticides, and Bobby Kennedy told me himself, we are not, the administration is not going after banning any pesticides or restricting their use now, this year, whatever. So this has been false information that has been spread by Pajer to get everybody upset that they've got their GMO seeds and they won't be able to use them because they won't be able to get the glyphosate.
Yeah, and that brings me to another bullet point from the Tennessee Farm Bureau. It says there is concern that if this type of litigation continues to be successful, manufacturers will stop producing these products, which are vital to farmers. Pajer has publicly stated that without resolution to this issue, the company will be compelled to remove glyphosate from the market. So this is also very deceptive languaging. Monsanto lost the patent to glyphosate in the year 2000, and they no longer have the global share of the market. And there is another American firm, Pajer is German, it's not American. There is an American firm making glyphosate down in Missouri, and there's companies all over the world that make glyphosate. And the other thing is Pajer continues to make GMO seeds that are glyphosate resistant. So if they were really intending on pulling this product from the market, why are they spending so much money investing in GMO seeds that are resistant to it? So this was just false fear put on the companies. And then a third thing, one of the questions that they put to legislators and to the farmers and to the general public is, should companies be held liable for failure to warn claims even though federal law prohibits making changes to the federally approved label? Again, that's extremely deceptive. If a company wants to change their label, they simply fill out, an application to change it, they submit the data to support the label change, and the EPA can approve that. Now, when it comes to glyphosate, the EPA is assisting the pesticide industry. In 2020, they drafted, they did their new human health assessment for glyphosate that said it was not likely carcinogenic. Then they were sued by several environmental groups, and then the court found that EPA had serious violations in how they undertook their assessment. It was awful. So the court vacated that finding. So we're left with a 1993 glyphosate assessment from the EPA. And then in California, Prop 65 passed. And they said that glyphosate is likely to cause cancer. They were requiring it to be on any glyphosate-containing product. So a label was drafted to put the warning on glyphosate products, including Roundup. EPA said, we don't agree that it causes cancer, so that would be misbranding. We won't approve that label. So California went back to the drawing board, and they came up with a label that said, this organization believes it's carcinogenic, the state of California does, EPA disagrees, but here's the information, right? And, everybody's different with their exposure, whatever. So it was language that did give a warning that some entities did believe it caused cancer. EPA agreed with the language. They said, yes, you can put that on your product. It's not misbranding. But they said, we will allow it to be on the label if the manufacturer asks us to put it on the label, okay? So then what did Bayer Monsanto do? Did they ask EPA, yes, please, we're being sued. Put the warning on the label and we'll stop the lawsuits. No, they filed a lawsuit against the state of California claiming it was compelled speech, violated free speech, and they won in court along with all of their biggest customers, the soybean growers and the corn growers, and so the EPA withdrew their approval because it was considered compelled speech. But, so you can see how disingenuous everything is. So Amy and I have done a deep dive on FIFRA, the federal, insecticide law. And you gotta know that the term pesticide means insecticide, fungicide, herbicide, rodenticide, bactericide, defoliants, a huge number of products. It's massive. So, we did that deep dive, and there is, and the attorney might be touching on this. I think that the most important things are, number one, the federal and state constitution that protect your right to a jury trial, just right there in the Constitution. You can't, in fact, in Tennessee it says it's inviolate. You cannot violate this. And the other thing is the federal law that, these labels and these products are registered under says right in there, registration is not a defense. Registration includes labeling, includes everything. Because Congress, when they passed all these, the federal pesticide law, they know that number one, you can't trust federal agencies, and number two, you can't trust corporations. So they did not want registration to be able to be a defense. They want, you have your right to go to court. And then my last thing I want to say is, at both the state and federal level, there is very strong language that says, however, registration with a federal agency, with the EPA, you can use that as what they say prima facie evidence that you follow the law. So right now, pesticide manufacturer, if they're being accused of causing harm, they can go to court and defend themselves, say, but we have an EPA-approved label. They can already say that. And the plaintiff has to come up with enough evidence to override that so that the court case can go through. And obviously it has gone through. When that first trial happened, we got the Monsanto papers. Thousands and thousands of papers, internal documents, communications that shows that Monsanto knew from the 1970s that glyphosate was likely carcinogenic. That's why the big payouts, because the juries, when they find out what Monsanto knew and when they knew it, they are angry. And they're increasingly angry. Like, after all these years, you're still not admitting it.
That's actually a good segue. Can you talk to one of the biggest things that came from even the Republican side? Normally, we would be concerned with foreign products coming overseas and controlling what our laws are. They would turn the other way and say, no, I'm not after frivolous lawsuits. That's my problem. So can you touch a little bit on what is a frivolous lawsuit, and does the law even allow for the frivolous lawsuit? Because that was repeated I don't know how many times. We are not voting for these trial lawyers to have frivolous lawsuits.
My name is Leila Watson, and I am a trial lawyer.
But we love you.
I have sued Bayer, we call them Bayer AG because they are a German company. I have sued them for Roundup causing harm and death to my clients. I have sued them. Before that, the big one was on a trying to remember the name of it, a medication that fought high cholesterol. Lipitor? No, not Lipitor. This one is Baycol, thank you. Baycol is no longer on the market. When they put it on the market, this is the history of this company. Bayer knew that it was too strong, and that if administered to skinny old women, it would kill them. And they didn't put it in a label, and they sold it, and lawsuits got filed because skinny old ladies died from rhabdomyolysis, a very, very severe kidney disease. And finally, it was recalled. So Bayer can say that they don't like frivolous lawsuits, and I'll tell you, I don't like a frivolous lawsuit. But this bill is not going to protect anybody from a frivolous lawsuit. There are already laws and rules and doctrines and disciplines and they've always been there, all these protections against frivolous lawsuits. If I file a lawsuit that is frivolous, that is, I file it just because I hate my neighbor and I just want to cause them some aggravation and make them hire a lawyer and go through whatever misery because I don't like their barking dog, that's a frivolous lawsuit. That lawsuit is going to be dismissed with prejudice, and I'm going to be sanctioned. And if I'm dumb enough to do it a second, a third, and a fourth time, eventually there's going to be an order with very severe financial sanctions entered against me. If I file a lawsuit against Bayer AG claiming that Roundup causes, let's say Roundup causes breast cancer, and I don't have an expert, I don't have one study, I don't have one bit of evidence at the time I file that lawsuit, that is a frivolous lawsuit, and it will be dismissed with prejudice. If I file a lawsuit without expert, and I proceed forward and I don't have an expert to back up my claims, that case is going to get dismissed with prejudice. With prejudice means I can't refile it. If I file a lawsuit with an expert and I happen to choose some boneheaded guy out of wherever that just comes in and testifies without being able to back up his opinion, in other words, he's unreliable, he's going to get struck by the court. The law says he cannot testify, and that case will be dismissed with prejudice, and I will not be able to refile it. Those rules are already in place. This act doesn't add anything to it. It really, in fact, I don't think it's going to stop frivolous lawsuits. The law, the courts are going to stop frivolous lawsuits. What this act does that I think is so harmful from a legal perspective is it calls into question before the entire citizenry of Tennessee whether the courts are biased, unfair, corrupt, and unable to protect the citizens that show up in front of it. Well, that's just not the way the courts are. Like I just said, if I file any one of those kind of cases, the court is going to dismiss my case with prejudice. It is not fair to say that the courts are corrupt and won't protect you. And I think that's an implicit impression from this bill. The other thing when I read the bill that I worried about is I wonder if it goes too far. We also, my law firm, trial lawyers, so we sued on opioids. We represented just about every county and municipality in the state of Arkansas, along with the Arkansas Attorney General. We did not do that in Tennessee. I'm sure it got done in Tennessee because the Tennessee Attorney General, he signed up. He signed the state of Tennessee up into a lot of the class actions against the opioid manufacturers, the Sackett family, a lot of the distributors and sellers of opioid, and recovered for the state of Tennessee and its citizens $230 million because opioids were mislabeled. I worry that the language in this act is so broad that it will prevent your Attorney General from filing a lawsuit against a manufacturer of an herbicide or a pesticide that is harmful to the citizens of Tennessee, that is false advertising, that breaches, it's just harmful, just like opioids, that it will prevent your attorney general from being able to file that case. I would worry about that. Michigan had a act until, I think it was actually less than a year ago, it got repealed. But in the 90s, Michigan passed a statute, pretty much like this act, that said that nobody will be able to maintain a lawsuit against a pharmaceutical manufacturer or seller if the label on the drug is approved by the FDA. Well, that meant that in the state of Michigan, when Baycol got withdrawn from the market for killing all those skinny old women, no skinny old woman's family in Michigan could file their lawsuit. That just got repealed. You know why it got repealed? Because somebody in the legislature and the Senate up in Michigan finally realized that was a really, really bad law. It hurt Michigan's citizens across the board. And so I worry that this act would have that same effect.
Thank you.
And it doesn't give you any protection. The protections against frivolous lawsuits, my point is, it's there.
Yeah.
You don't need this act for that.
Well, and I also think there's several things brought up with frivolous lawsuits, but we're seeing the harm done. And for future, the infertility, we're not even discussing the infertility today. But as we wrap up this panel, it's a hard conversation. It's not an easy answer, but it does need to be discussed because it affects every single one of us. And I'm sure you guys know people harmed. I know people harmed. I actually invited someone who is harmed to testify during the bill and come to this event. And both times he can't come. Why? The first time because he was having treatment for his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and couldn't travel. And today he can't because yesterday he had surgery from the treatment damage from his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So it's real and it's affecting our families. And to make healthier communities, we need to understand, and as citizens, our responsibility to hold people accountable and in our government to be able to not pass these laws such as this. So, if it's 10 seconds.
I drove a long way.
Mama Bear's going to rise
Two
up.
things I'll throw that when Bernadette and I talked the other day, the MSDS or MDS today, companies and corporations update those routinely. And so when we talked about that the other day, that become a light bulb for me that somebody was lying on the whole label thing. Mm-hmm. The other thing I would offer, and I appreciate my trial lawyer partner here uses the word bonehead, but I would say this, don't trust your attorney general. Your attorney general in the state of Tennessee is fighting against your gun rights right now. So I wouldn't trust them as far as I could throw them. We need to elect attorney generals in Tennessee.
Yes, our attorney general is appointed by the governor. And last words.
One very last word. As we fought the opioids with Purdue Pharmaceutical, the thing is, yes, we did go to war, and we did get the family to have to spend all this money. And our solution now is to take all the people in drug court and put them on a cocktail of opioids, including the one that we fought to get rid of, so that we're spending more money than they paid in putting it in their other pocket, because we are causing the people who are arrested for drug use to perpetually be addicts. They will tell you, I have to remember I'm an addict. And that comes to mind when it's spiritually based, though, such as there's a ministry, Blue Monarch, in my district. And when those people come off of the drugs, and it's hard, and they are surrounded by people who love them, who are praying for them, who walk with them, but they have told me, Senator Boland, they told me, remember, you're an addict. Remember, you're an addict. You'll have to take these drugs the rest of your life. And I can tell them now, no, I'm not an addict. I'm the righteousness of Jesus Christ, and I'm set free.
Amen.
Well,
Amen. Good
well,
job.
thank you very much.